With me on stage, of course, very beautiful and inspiring people. Gianna, Olaf, Jono, Markus, and Fili. And we would like to talk about evolution of search and evolution of searchers and the search result pages. We would like to use about 30 minutes. And after that, we would like to do a short Q&A if you like. So feel free to keep some notes and questions afterward for these guys to get your answers. So back in the days where we had 10 blue lines, links in search result pages, everything was fine. We entered one keyword and get 10 results. Everything was looking the same. Boring, stupid. And after that, we tried to get new ideas. We learned how to use search engines. What do you think? Do the people know that there was an evolution of search? Do they recognize that the time now is different than it was 10 years ago? Just feel free. Nobody.
We knew it would come to this, right?
Hello.
No.
I mean, I could start definitely, but it could be an epic kind of
just
monologue.
Try to be
so,
short as possible.
So I mean, so from my perspective, and this is bias, of course, but I mean that's the point in our industry. We are all the searchers and the consultants or the solution architects or whatever. So from our perspective, it's always a little bit hard to kind of tell. But when I look at, I don't know, my friends and family, and last weekend I was at my 20 anniversary from senior high school, meeting my old friends, and almost no one is in a digital business. And of course I'm asking these people, you know, and what they're doing and how they do stuff. And of course everybody uses Google. But nobody is going to complain, oh, Google, oh, it looks so different now, and it was so different 10 years ago, and I don't like it, whatever. So I believe, and when you just look at people using Google, they just adopt. They see, okay, there's something different. Sometimes they notice, sometimes they don't. And based on, I mean, how they use Google, Google is adopting and changing it. So that's why if you look at mobile, the mobile search results, they look so different than the desktop search results because you use your mobile phone in a different way. You want to have different information. That's why the search result page looks different. And then you don't have just 10 blue links anymore. So I think we are the ones who complain that, hey, 10 years ago, 10 blue links, it was so easy. And even a couple more years ago, it was like the Google dance at the end of every month, and then the results were more or less fixed. For the consumer, they don't care. They just want to have the best answer as soon as possible, and they don't recognize.
I think the easy thing to forget is just how shit the 10 blue links were and how many of them were bad results and spam and irrelevant and how many times you had to change your query just slightly to get exactly what you wanted. I think there is much less friction in the system now that you don't see when you see it evolve gradually, but if you look back, it wasn't great. And I think increasingly off the back of that, users expect that lack of friction. And Google, as they move more away from links to websites at all, and you get more stuff in answer boxes and surfacing interactive stuff that solves the query outright. I think if you compared those two things and you said, here's a list of links, it's your guess as to if any of them are any good versus going, okay, here's the precise solution to what you wanted served up without you having to click. It's monumentally different. Yeah, nobody sees it evolve over time.
But just think about 10 years ago, you still had MySpace, right? I mean, just think about it. 10 years ago, there was MySpace. 10 years ago, the iPhone came out, the first iPhone. So 10 years is a pretty long time in the digital kind of age.
Yeah, but you do have to keep in mind that, well, actually almost 20 years ago at this point, when Google went live, the one thing they did go live with was the I'm feeling lucky button, which is basically what we now see as the featured snippets as the answer. So Google has been trying to figure out since the beginning, okay, what is the #1 answer? And from what I know is that, as I understood it, the founders were never happy with the 10 results because they were always like, hey, why isn't there just one? Yeah, why should we have 3? Why should we have 7? Why should we have 10? Why should we have 20? You know, it was always the question, I'm asking one question, I should get one answer, not 10 answers, one answer. And they've been working on that for the last almost 20 years already. Yeah. So it's not really a new thing, but for the average user, yes, it is true that the average user is less sophisticated in the queries than it may have done in the past because of narrowing it down. It was more of an art form at the beginning to find the right query. Actually, you almost had to be a librarian. And funny enough, I studied for that. So for this reason, and for that reason, I also really enjoy search, because it literally, Google is fulfilling the need of the librarian in between the average user who doesn't know what's all out there and needs some tips and advice on where to look and where to find the data they might be looking for. And I think for the average user, Google just got smarter. Now, for the average user, it's two things. One is that Google got smarter. The other thing is, for some of the users, it will also be more creepier because of how smart they became, as well as which data sources they use for that. So I think that's the two things with the user today compared to the user almost 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago for that matter.
I think the context of each individual user it is very important, will get more and more important. So which device they use, from which IP place, such things, and they will learn it to use different devices belonging to the context they are at the moment in.
For the last few years, you already see at the bottom underneath the search results your location if you're logged in, and that's always been based on your mobile. If you've also were logged in on your mobile, or they did an IP recognition on your desktop, they narrowed it down where you were based on that alone already, even though you had not entered your location manually, just because they knew from your mobile. So that's where the creepy part comes in. But yeah, personalization is absolutely something that Google has been working on a long time as well, and not just Google.
But from all things that you have been saying so far, it sounds pretty much as if Google and, well, basically everything else where you can perform a search is just adapting to the user, but not the other way around. Well, I don't think so. Well, they do a bit, supposing or seeing the user behavior. But users do the same. For example, let's say you're having someone using Google for the very first time. Let's say we go 10 years back. So people were actually learning that the search engine is not understanding a full query, like a full question, a full sentence. And that's different now. And then people now, when they, for example, I don't know, use Google Glass or Google Home on their phones, they actually feel stupid just using the phrases that they learned that Google would actually understand them best. But they I think they had to unlearn it. So I've seen people trying to, when they were first using Google Home, saying, okay, Google, and then just Indian restaurant. And they were getting what they were looking for, but they were kind of feeling strange. So they had to learn that, or to unlearn what they've learned before. So, and there's not only Google out there, or Bing, or Alexa. There are like very little, small, tiny fragments of ways where you can actually search. You can search within apps. You can search, for example, some of you, the German people of you might know chefkoch.de. So they're a big recipe website. They've got like 300,000 recipes. And you can actually, basically, they are more or less a recipe search engine. But as you said before, Google, the user is expecting one result, so the best recipe. However, so basically they are using the search within this environment in a different way than they are on Google or on Alexa, because they have learned that those systems are understanding them in a different way. So they're actually, how do you say that? They're moving towards each other. So the user towards the search system he or she is using, and, well, the search system towards the user, or what they suspect might be user behavior.
So from the perspective of Google also learning the different context as it is, they've been trying to do this a long time already. Like in Google in the US, they had Google 4.11 which was basically a dial-in version where you called in and you basically set your query and you got answers spoken out by a computer, and then you went on from there. So they've been trying to get this, and Grand Central, I don't know if you guys remember that, that's Google Voice. It became later Google Voice, which was basically a product of Google that they bought, which basically transcribes messages. So you get a free phone number in the US, you leave a message, and you get it as an email, written down. So they've been learning a lot of stuff in conceptual and text building and all that kind of stuff. Don't forget one other thing, by the way, on search. It's really not just about Google, although it is very interesting, and obviously Google is pretty dominant when we're talking about the standard search engine. But like you also mentioned Alexa, for example, Amazon bought years ago A9, which is also a search engine. And they've been using that in the back end. And they've been working together with Bing, with Cortana, which basically uses Bing as a back end. So even though that we might not necessarily see it on a day-to-day basis, we might be using multiple search engines without even knowing it.
Yeah. So actually, as you said, the users don't recognize that they use different systems. They might not recognize that they use it in a different contextual situation. As far as I recognize, most people I know don't recognize that there might be a different situation when you search on mobile and on desktop. And as far as I know, and maybe you all get the same idea, they're not able to differentiate between paid results, shopping results, news results, and the normal organic SEO results. Do you think that the search result pages, even on Google, mobile apps, whatever, will more integrate the other vertical stuff, the other systems? Is there a continuous way of integration of the special results?
This is mine again. So I think definitely, I mean, it has to. And when we talk about search engines, Fili brought out Amazon. I mean, the second largest search engine is YouTube. So, I mean, why don't we talk about YouTube? It's another Google product. And when I look at my kids, for example, or other more younger people using YouTube, the crazy thing is they don't really search anymore. They use the recommendations that YouTube is giving them. They just click, they see the next video. There's some ad in between, whatever. They click the next video and so on. So for them, searching is not that kind of searching we think searching anymore. For them, it's like just using the recommendations. And when you just have this in mind, and coming back to your question, Markus, I think all these different channels, I mean, we see now product listing ads as one channel, AdWords another channel, news another channel, or, I don't know, knowledge graph and all these other search integrations. I mean, they're coming one product because this is the search result page, and of course you can pay for certain areas and maybe through different systems or APIs, but it's one experience that the user is going to have. And the younger the people are, if you just look at them, they definitely don't care about ads anymore. They just click on the result they believe that suits them the most. And this is going to be the future, and we have to deal with it. So it means SEO is going to change in a way where we have to optimize for what does the user want, how does he want to have a user, how is maybe also the context, like clicking, like I said with the YouTube video, if they don't actively search, how can I make my video actually be in this related list that people do see it and click it? And that's pretty exciting, but it's going to be very different to what we have now.
Just a very quick question. Show of hands here, how many of you are using YouTube? And not just using, but posting? Okay, so everyone else is basically missing an opportunity to rank in another search engine, and a big one for that matter. Yeah.
It does feel like the assumption that a user has a need, opens up google.com, types something into a box, is presented with a list of links, makes some kind of rational decision over, I'm going to click an organic one rather than the paid one, and I will click the one that's in first because that's ranked highest, feels very much like yesterday's world. To your point, there is a search experience that happens and you get a blend of types of results. Most of the time, Google will be actively trying to solve that problem in situ with a flight engine or a rich snippet or a direct answer. Like, their ambition isn't to be a search engine or to provide search results or to rank things in a specific order. Their ambition is to solve the query and to monetize that. Like, the idea that these are different ecosystems and different verticals is very, very scary, that we still, as an industry, consider to think that way. Like, the fact that we have a line between paid and organic search feels scarily outmoded at this stage when you see a list of results and you engage with it. The user doesn't care, they don't know.
I think the YouTube thing, we have to differentiate between, on YouTube, a lot of people are not searching for entertainment, they're searching for tutorials or something like that, then I'm with you, but the other big mass of people there want to be entertained, and so they're jump between the videos and they're not really searching there.
I would beg to differ, especially when we're talking about the younger generation. YouTube is a massive part of their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the young people, then they do search. It's not just like, oh, we only go with recommendations. They have to start somewhere.
And also challenge
they have to start somewhere, but then they are jumping and...
No,
but that's search. It's just, it's not explicitly typing something and searching for it, but there is a user who has a need, and that's a form of entertainment. And by some decision process and some form of ranking and choices, they will navigate through those videos. Like, there are tools and tactics you can use to optimize either who manually recommends who or which videos show up. That's a form of search. It's not radically different to optimizing rankings.
And just keep in mind that when we're talking about Google, we're talking more than 130 billion queries per day. And for YouTube to be, and that's just Google search, and if we then talk about YouTube being the second largest, I don't know the exact number but I'm guessing it's just underneath there somewhere, you know, that's still massive. And that's something that we shouldn't be ignoring. Now, from a personalization point of view, I can see also a lot more happening on that front. We already saw some of the stuff happening last month, in the last couple of weeks, with the search results being locked down on the location that you are.
Yeah, but that's a mess for everyone who is traveling internationally, seriously. I think this is something that Google needs to change.
They're not gonna. And I wrote an article on this, why they did it. And for most people, they think like, okay, yeah, this is because, you know, data scraping or anything else for that matter. And believe me, that has been an issue as well for Google. But it's not as big as an issue as you might think. What, in my opinion, is really the reason why Google has locked this down is literally legal. Because they've been so much in trouble with, for example, the right to be forgotten. By taking out something out of France, but then it's still being shown in the UK or on the .com. And there was actually, shortly after I published my article, like 2 weeks ago or something, and there was 3 days later, also a news article about a similar situation, not the right to be forgotten, but a Canadian company who had a legal win to take out all references of a particular company across all Google properties, and but it was ordered by a Canadian court, and Google had to go to fight it in the US to basically say, well, hello, Canadian law cannot be applied to American law, and you know I don't know exactly what they're basically waiting for default judgment because the other guys never showed up, but it shows the problem they're having, like the different jurisdictions. They can't comply with all of them. But if you can't take away the visibility by basically saying, okay, in Canada, you're just going to see the Canadian results. It doesn't matter on which of our properties you are. Now, suddenly, you know, most will not see. And the complaints stop, even though they're still showing it everywhere else. So it's just a legal reason for my how I see it. But for the average user, I agree with you. For travel, it sucks. For us, it sucks as well, as SEOs and stuff. But and to be very honest, sometimes I also want to see how is the search result in the UK without having to travel to the UK. You know, like, hey, what would someone in the UK see? That's an interesting thing. And I'm not just talking about from an SEO perspective, but also as a user perspective or as a librarian. Like, I want to know, as an information professional, I want to know what are some of the choices that other nationalities are presented with that I am not necessarily? Or is it the same or not? I can't answer that question without traveling now. You can, but... Yeah, okay, fair enough. I can, but there's some URL premise you can use, but still, or you can use a proxy or something along those lines. But you have to hack the system now instead of simply using the other domain name.
So one thing you mentioned is that Google, in different ways, are going more to be the gatekeeper to information and to extract the current filter bubble, as we said. You know it from Facebook already, so if you just more the left-wing political ideas, you are presented with the content right this way. If we use voice search, where we get only one result, how will Google decide if it's the left-wing or the right-wing decision, which I would make if I get at least 2 links to decide. With voice search, I won't get the idea, the chance. So is there a way that Google will try to don't be the filter bubble to give me the way to decide by myself?
How often is your query going to be phrased in an explicitly neutral way, where you don't give away any bias towards what the answer you're looking for or your kind of tone? Feels like that's going to be, especially with voice, you're going to ask something rambly and wobbly that definitely will give them stuff that they can work with, and you'll get, yeah, it will reinforce the filter bubble because it's going to be implicit in your query or explicit in your query.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at how people use smart speakers right now, I mean, voice search, the things they ask are very simple things, where one answer is actually really the best answer.
But I think Malte's example was clear. If you search for, is milk healthy, you get a yes. And if you search for, is milk unhealthy, you get a yes.
Yeah, but that's, I just come, this is my second part of my answer.
Okay, sorry.
So, the thing is, Google tries to, all companies that invest in these voice search, aka smart speaker industry, they try to answer things that are actually based on structured data, things you can get out of databases like Wikipedia very quick. So this is what we are going to see now and in the next months and probably years as the foundation. Everything that you said, Markus, which is a little bit more complicated, I think that's something where the speaker itself is not going to help. If you look at your phone and you use voice search, different experience, you can still choose and you can still look. If you look at smart speakers where you just get the answer presented very quickly, it's more or less based on likely your preferences. So if you ask for, hey, what is my news summary for today? If you use Alexa, then you get what you actually used as a setup with your favorite news sources. So then you have your bias again. But all the other stuff that we now dream of, like all marketers like, today evening I want to go to a party, I have to look for a new suit. So, hey Alexa, find me new suits. And then you see maybe on your TV a lot of suits, and then I take the third one in the second row. Okay, yeah, my size, Alexa, you know my size. And then you just order to me with Amazon Prime at the same day. I think this is something we dream of that's not coming next year and the year after. This is far away in the future. But of course, voice search and how we interact, this is going to change. But what you said with this bias, I think I don't really see the issues, because the user in the end is the one who wants to choose. And when there's something where there's a bias, they will see, or they will have more than one answer. And coming back to your point, I don't know if Malte said that, but we in Searchmetrics made a study based on the accuracy of the answers of smart speakers, and Google Home could answer 39 out of 100 answers correctly, and Alexa even, what was it, 23 I guess, was, or 26. So they're actually often pretty wrong. So that's why it's, at the moment it's more or less toys and nice things to use as a timer or simple things, but that's it at the moment.
The ads are very nice to see, but it's very futuristic still, yeah. But I'm going to disagree with you for a moment because, not on the voice speakers, but on the bias part. Because I do see the bias heavily, and also with the filter bubble part. One of the things I'm doing consciously is, for example, with UK news, with Brexit, for example, being one of the issues. Yeah, no, I'm not looking at you, Jono. But Brexit being one, being one of those issues in Europe. I do follow most of that news in different newspapers, mostly English-speaking newspapers. But if I see what the Telegraph or the Mirror is writing, or the Daily something, whatever. So, no, something, but I forget the name. Daily Mail, right, that was it. If you see what they are writing, if you compare that with The Independent, with a couple of these other high-quality news sources, or the BBC even for that matter, you know, or The Guardian, these are completely different views. And the one is really focused on fear, and the other one is very focused on in-depth analysis. And that can be either positive or negative, but hey, it's interesting. And if I'm consciously still clicking on the telegraph.co.uk results, even though, to be very honest, I do not agree with how they're presenting things. And I think a lot of it is just clickbait and stuff like that. But if that doesn't appear in my feed anymore, which is, by the way, with Google now, is really limited in the options you get, in the stories you get suggested, I really get the feeling I'm missing out on the other side. I don't see what the other side is actually talking about, what their arguments are. And I think we're going to see, with this type of filter bubbling kind of like increasing with AIs especially, and assistants, I can see more polarization like we've seen with what we see right now in the US with Trump and the anti and the pro-Trump side kind of thing, and with Brexit, the pro and the anti-Brexit thing.
But politics will always be hard, and it's not going to be solved by voice search or smart speakers.
I'm not saying it's going to be solved, but I do say that it's going to be more polarized by, it's going to unify more groups because they don't see the other side anymore. I think they're taking away part of the information with the filter bubble, because if you're very focused, like your example, if I'm focused on the right or I'm focused on the left, I'm just going to see the left, and I'm going to be justified in my thinking without questioning from the other side, am I thinking the right thing? Yeah, like I'm not hearing the counter arguments. I'm just hearing the confirmation of my thinking and which way I'm leaning, and I'm strengthening that without being open for the alternative argument. And I think that is a danger that we're going to see more with AI in the near future within search.
But don't you think that, let's say, it's not, well, let's say it's not happening as you suspect, or as it already has started. So you're not in your filter bubble, you're looking for, I don't know, Brexit, for example, and you get mixed results. Don't you think that users would still prefer the links in the search engine result pages that, where the headlines are actually already to their flavor? You know what I mean? So users already do that, even if you give them the choice. So I think most of the people are not, well, that's just, I just suppose, I might be wrong, but most of the people, in my opinion, are not really, if they're not really specifically looking to have two sides to one thing, to one thought, then they tend to click on what looks most appealing to them. And that is something that, for example, just from the mere, because the main thing you're seeing is maybe a picture, and then that's the headline, and maybe they even read the description, but you never know. And with voice search, they won't get the description. So they will always tend to choose what. But it was always the case.
It was always the case. The only thing now is that we realize now that people can be manipulated. This is the point. I mean, what happened now with the election last year, I mean, this is, and the outcome, and that everybody was surprised. I mean, even with the Brexit, everybody was surprised. It's now only clear that everybody can be manipulated. Just think about the picture of this red bus in London, you know, with the, you know, how many millions in health is going to be wasted, etc. It's just the manipulation, and it was always the case. So I think a search engine can try to be neutral, but they can't, because when people are kind of can be manipulated, and some have, I don't know, title tags that look so appealing that they click. It's what's going to happen, and that's something. The only thing what you said, Fili, with AI is then when personalization is becoming more kind of a thing, then you only see things in
well,
one
and that's
search.
the thing. I already see that within Google Now, within Google Assistant, and this is before I'm even hitting the search result page. So you can say like, yeah, I'm going to search for something and I want to see both sides, and yeah, sure, I might click on the one that more eyes towards what I'm already thinking. But the thing is, I'm not even seeing the counter argument anymore. I don't even see that there is a counter argument. I just see justification of my argument.
But that way...
And it's not new. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying filter bubbles are new. They absolutely haven't been, because, like, just to give you an example, in the Netherlands in the 50s, the population was very divided in different pillars based on conviction of way of thinking. Either you're a socialist, or you were a Christian Democrat, or you were, you know, like, it was very, very polarized as well. So it's absolutely not new. And they all had their own newspapers, their own radio stations and stuff like that. And filter bubbles aren't new. But at the moment, like, there you knew there was another side. Now you don't necessarily ask that anymore. And with AIs trying to preempt, and Jono talked about partially in his presentation already, where we're not even part of the decision process. That's been taken away by AIs. We're not even seeing the other side. We just get confirmation. And as you nicely said, if you say this is unhealthy, you get an answer yes, and this is healthy, you still get the answer yes, because it depends on which angle you come from. The answer doesn't really change, just, yeah, you don't get presented with why or what is the counter argument as much anymore. And I think that's a danger that is much more is happening now. And I think that we see that in politics back with the manipulation, although I must honestly say Brexit and Trump was very predictable that they would both win, or that was very predictable.
Though, I mean, you could say guns don't kill people, but people kill people. So that's what it's not the search engines being the ones to blame primarily. They just make the filter bubble more, I don't know, they just create the environment you're in a way. But it's you choosing which environment you're in, which environment you're using. And it's basically people, companies, manipulating others. So that has always been around, right? So that has always been happening. And if you create that filter bubble to serve the user's needs, well, before that, the user has been looking for something to fill their needs by themselves. So they have more or less participated more in creating their own filter bubble. But basically, behind all this, it's not the search engines being manipulative, or the environments. First of all, it's the ones who really act out the manipulation, who have the aim to manipulate. Those are companies, those are advertisers, those are other people.
The basic question is, should a search engine teach or fulfill needs? That's which way?
And there's a technical and conceptual problem right at the very heart of this. So you can easily fix for is this information empirically false? They're doing a lot of work around that with things like Knowledge Vault, where they're trying to understand what true things are and what they look like. Once you get rid of those, there are still a huge amount of things where there isn't an obvious one correct answer. But the whole of Google's paradigm, and indeed a whole bunch of the other search engines, is based around this idea that one URL is about one topic, and for any given query, that will be the best result. We will pick the one best result. So in a world where you can ask, is milk healthy? Yes. And is milk unhealthy? Yes. Those are two different concepts. And those results might be the best result for both of those queries. And they might both in that context be correct. But there's no way that you can solve for that within the way that Google currently thinks and it currently works. All it's doing is trying to pick the best result for a specific thing. You can't get past the point where if you're searching for something where there is bias in the content already, there's no way to fix for that. Google can't fix that. The publishers won't. It's not in their interest. And in fact, it's probably more in their interest to cover all of those bases and confuse the matter. I don't think there's a solution to this.
I also think, coming back to the very first question, that the average user, and we're not even talking about the next billion that's coming online, that is not really an expert in computer use at all at this point. And it will take them a while to get ramped up as well, and then we're talking about the next billion after that. But even if I look at the average user, like even my parents-in-law, they both came online, so to say, in the last, say, 2 or 3 years. My father-in-law just came online literally in the last year. Yeah, he's absolutely not good with computers and stuff, but he just got a smartphone. Literally, I bought it for him because he didn't know which one to pick. You know, but here's the thing: a lot of these type of users, and there's still a lot of them. That's actually the majority of the users. They're not sophisticated enough to actually know which platform they're choosing. They don't know which technology they're choosing. They don't know which search engine they use. They just know, here's an app, I can ask my question, I get an answer. After a few questions or a few sites I've visited, I have a filter bubble. I don't know that, but I continue on within that filter bubble, and I just get my concept confirmed without knowing there's so much more out there in choice or in counter-arguments or everything else, in other choices of machines being search engines or AIs or other things that can give me alternative answers or a more in-depth answer. I may just not use them because I'm not sophisticated enough in their case to actually know that it exists or that it is an option or where to find it or how to use it or how to install it or any of that. They just go with the first option they have, and at that point, their filter bubble is being created and they're limited. Like you say, like, yeah, but they have multiple choice. I don't think they actually have. Yet literally, technically, yes, they do. Realistically, they don't.
But it has always been that way. Let's just move back. And people haven't had smartphones, haven't had Google. So what would they do if they wanted to have the news? They would buy a newspaper, right? So let's say you go to the corner store to get your newspaper. Every morning you get the whatever, Daily Telegraph, or whatever. So you go there, you get your newspaper. You go there twice, 3 times. You always get the same one because you just like the headlines the most because they already feed your need and already feed what you're thinking. So they already feed your filter bubble. And then it gets worse because the guy working at the corner store, he knows, oh, you've been buying this newspaper, this specific newspaper 3 times. He won't suggest you anything else. He will just, next time you come in, he just hands you it over. So to make you come back because you know, oh, that feels good. He knows what I'm looking for. And that you got the choice all at hand, but you won't see it. You won't even see it because you go in there and there's this guy looking at you, very sympathetic guy.
So two things on your like newspaper shop example. I agree, filter bubbles aren't new. But at the same time, I do think they're getting worse in a way because at that time in that corner shop, you would have maybe seen the headlines of every other newspapers. If you're talking about 100 years ago, you had street kids running around shouting the headlines of the different newspapers. So you would still hear something. And in this case, and what I just said a moment ago, we're not even getting that choice anymore. We don't see the other headlines.
Yeah,
we don't hear the other headlines anymore because of the limitation of what we have.
Yeah, but you're not going to the corner store every morning. Like you already know what you want, so you don't go in there as soon as you know what you want, because you've got your favorite newspaper, maybe because it's been recommended by your aunt or whatever. You don't just go around every morning looking, oh, that's the headline, that's the headline, that's the headline. Oh, today I take this one. You don't do that. You don't do that, and especially not if there's someone who learned that what you've been buying so far and just hands it over to you. So you don't even realize, you don't even see those. Just because you're able to, you're physically able to see it, that doesn't mean that you're doing it. And that's the case. So it's pretty much the same.
The bias isn't created at the point where you first install Chrome on your new phone and then decide what you're going to read. You already have baggage.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I don't know, but do we have some cool questions from the audience now? So, seriously, guys.
Yeah, by the way, I was asked earlier to have a nice argument, so I'm going to point there.
Yes, I'm wondering if there is an answer, if you have an answer to why do you think Google and all the other search engines always try to come up with an answer by just one question from you? Why is it not that Google answers the question, puts a question? I mean, you put the issue iPhone. Someone puts in just the word iPhone. Why is not the future Google asking the most probably question, do you want to buy one?
They do it in America.
When will that come?
They even do it here.
I mean, the first thing that Google started with this is Google Suggest, right? I mean, you put something in the search form, and Google does give you a lot of recommendations already. I don't know why people still search for these kind of shorthand terms. I don't know, maybe because they don't know. But Google is going to give you a lot of ideas already. Related searches, Google Suggest. They will do better in the future, very, very likely. But
the easier way would be to just ask a question.
Actually, they are.
In the American SERPs, I think they will serve questions
even in the German SERPs.
Yeah, I don't see it in Germany.
If you type a question, if you type a certain keyword, and it doesn't work for every single one, but there's plenty of times where you have 1 or 2 results, and then you have a block with questions that you can expand. And these are questions with answers straight away. And this is like, okay, iPhone, what is the newest iPhone? Or what's the recent ratings on iPhone? I'm just making it up right now. But you get different types of questions, of frequently asked questions regarding that topic, as one of the top results on top, maybe not top, but like in the top 5, basically.
Yeah. It's actually
and then related at the bottom as well.
It's not a dialogue right now. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's not.
They're trying to do that, and to be very honest, I would not be surprised. Keep in mind that when Larry and Sergey were starting to build Google, and they came with the one answer thing with "I'm feeling lucky" button as well, they always had in mind like something like a Star Trek computer, where you basically walk into a room, say like, "Hey, find me all the planets there that have someone who's called that name, and find me X amount of composers on that also play that instrument, and cross-reference those, and send that list to my pad." Whatever. This is the kind of stuff that I can see happening within the next 5-10 years. That we're basically, especially with assistants, that it's not just searching for you, it's also compiling the data, narrowing it down, and presenting you with the shortlist based on sophisticated instructions you give them. Not just what Jono was describing with, okay, in a way it's partially what he was describing, except for the cross-referencing. Like in his case, it was what he was presenting, I don't know if you were there, but was basically like, okay, instead of 50 washing machines, give me the best 3, which is a narrow down action that they can already do, and that will be most definitely something that will be further developed in the next few years. The cross-referencing of multiple different databases, including different indexes, that will be really interesting. Like, okay, cross-link everything from LinkedIn, Facebook, and Google search results, and Twitter, and find me the best XYZ, And that's something that will be very interesting to see. But that's a couple of years down the line still. Next question.
First of all, guys, thanks for the discussion. Very interesting. Already to hear your opinion also on the filter bubble. The thing that I wanted to ask is, we were talking about voice search, and someone mentioned down the discussion that Google wants to monetize everything. Do you have any idea on how Google is planning to monetize voice search? Would you think they will have something like radio commercial kind of things, or do you rather think that they will push ads to your phone if it's more how do you say if it's a question that they can't answer straight away?
So this is something I touched on earlier. I think the number of scenarios where you only get one result will actually end up being quite rare. They will give you a subset of here's the cheapest one, here's the fastest one, here's the biggest one, and it's not very hard for them to then say, oh, and here's our sponsored or preferred one, and they just take a slice of all of that transactional stuff. For informational queries and directional queries, they'll want to solve it as frictionlessly, really shot. Frictionlessly as possible in order to get you using and hooked, but then anything that's even remotely commercial, they'll just go, and here's our preferred option.
Perhaps they will get an affiliate provision when you buy, they send you to shop and then they will get, when you buy at the shop you will get an affiliate, a kickback for the buy.
And in a world where they're trying to surface the best result, it's questionable what best means if you could then bid on some kind of, well, if it's ambiguous, maybe spend $2 or $3 in the same way you would for a click to get surfaced at the top. There's definitely models where they can butcher the AdWords setup and make it into a marketplace.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I stole the microphone. I have a question that's a bit wide, and I apologize in advance. But to you today, do you consider Google like a media company or a tech company?
So, yeah, so I'm actually an ex-Googler, ex-Google engineer, and it's in a way hard to answer that one because I think they were a tech company more in the past. I think they've become much more a media company from those two. The reason for it is that one of the simple things that they stopped doing was 20% projects. Yeah, and the moment Larry Page took over, like the guy is genius, don't get me wrong on that one, and he's done a lot of good. But at the same time, one of the things they did from that moment on was shut down a lot of products, like Google Reader. I still am angry about that. I was there at the time. I'm still angry about that. I did write some emails internally trying to get that, not happen. But I still miss it on a daily basis in principle. Even all the alternatives on the market, they weren't, or they still are not as good as Google Reader was. But Google Reader only had a few million users, or X amount of million of users, where the rest of Google was in the billions. So how can you justify keeping that alive, especially with vulnerabilities and software updates and need to maintain things and stuff? I understand from the business point of view why they shut it down. I'm not happy with it, but I understand it. And I think that's when they moved from Eric Smith as a tech company, more focused on innovation with Eric Smith, to more a media company, more focused on profit and growth. And again, not bad, they're a company, but I think that's where they moved. And if you look like how many big, new, exciting products, web-based products, did Google launch in the last few years? Sure, they do have some hardware and AIs, but other than that, like, where's the replacement of Gmail? Where's the replacement of AdSense? Where's the replacement of AdWords? None of that, all of that stuff was during Eric Smith. So, yeah, that's just my take on it.
So, if you want to hear my opinion, so I believe we all completely underestimate Google. If we ask the question, is Google a tech company or a media company, I think it's your question. It's a good question, but I think we all completely underestimate what Google is capable of. Because what they actually really, really do, and if you look at the data they're collecting, I mean, if you use Google Maps, and I think most of us, we use Google Maps, have you experienced now how accurate it is? I mean, if you just see some car stopping ahead of you, you see, oh, it's getting yellow. Oh, no, now it's red. You see in real time so quickly that Google is capable of using the real-time data and what they have built so quickly that we all like Google Maps now. But if you look at the whole Google world, I mean, let's take a look at Alphabet, not just Google. Alphabet, they will have a huge influence on everything we do in our whole life. And that's why I wouldn't ask is Google a media company. I mean, Google is really, when Larry came on board again, I mean, like took over as the CEO, they were focused on making more profits. Sundar, I guess, is a pretty good guy in really making Google the money-making machine. But I really, really believe it's not about, bringing out some fancy things. I think they're really focused on influencing every part of the life we have to serve the best ads, to make our life as easy as possible, and they will do. And that's why, I mean, if you have money, just buy Alphabet stock. I mean, even if it's already pretty expensive, seriously, but they will grow so much more. It will be ridiculous.
Also, I mean, there's only a small part of what Google's actually doing is visible to us. So it might look as if it's more or less a media company because that's the way the parts we see. That's the only way it makes it visible to us. But then there's Google Health, for example, and they're just really investing heavily in research. So yeah, it's be much more changing the way we live probably than we actually realize, or it might become. But the only part that's visible is the media part. But I think it's, well, in a way, it's still a tech company because they're investing in research a lot. So, but then again, does it matter?
And then all the stuff behind the scenes gives them geometric growth on their intelligence, and like all of this data and all of these systems are connected to a degree. So every time you fill in one of those visual captures that says mark the bits that are signpost, you're training their driverless cars. Like every time Google Maps updates, they are remapping all of the Wi-Fi hotspots in the world, which helps them understand where businesses are and helps them do geolocate. Like all of these things touch all the other things in ways that gives them 10, 100, 1,000x the opportunity and the economies of scale versus everybody else they're playing against. So they've already won behind the scenes, and there's this monstrous thing that's intricate and complicated. Sure, they are things they do that aren't sophisticated, and sure, their product launches are rubbish, but under all of that, just monstrous amounts of sophistication and capability. So yeah, buy the stock and see what happens tomorrow.
Never underestimate also how much data they store and can collect. Like literally, Google exists because they stored data from the beginning. That's why Google exists, why they can do the things they do today, because they still have all the data from the beginning at their fingertips, including all the log files and everything. But do keep in mind there is a difference between Google and Alphabet. Like like there's a lot of hardware stuff like Loon and stuff like that. That's all great, and yes, that can bring the next billion+ users online and stuff like that. But and even driverless car. But those projects are all aimed on. Well, like it's basically, what do you do if you have an extra hour every single day, but you're stuck in the traffic, but hey, you don't have to drive? You can now use that time productively, in a productive way by going online using Google products. Yeah, this is why they invest in driverless cars. Not because they want to solve the problem of driverless cars. No, they want your attention when you're not driving, because the car is driving for you. So you now have the time to do something else, and they want that attention. And when it comes to Loon and everything like that, it's about getting you online so you can use their services. Yeah, those balloon things. So a lot of this comes back to the media company stuff. And it's not like, yes, tech is the back end, and they're really great at some of the inventions they do there, and really, really good. I've seen some really amazing stuff. But at the same time, it's all in service nowadays, not of the innovation part, which was at the beginning more the case. Now it's really more about how can we keep the attention, how can we solve the problem of the user, how can we bind them to our company, to Android and all the other things, all the other Alphabet projects. And it all comes back to Google being the money machine from a media perspective and keeping their attention. In the past, we had Yahoo and MSN and a bunch of other ones where they didn't want you to go away from their platforms. They were a portal, and they wanted to create a space within the internet where you would find everything and you wouldn't have to go away, so they could get more exposure for their advertisers towards the users of their platform. So they can increase the number of page views and stuff like that. And this is, in an indirect sense, basically what's happening from a media perspective, with all the other technical advances that Google is doing. Technological. I'm going too.
Okay. I think we have a last question right there.
Yes. Sorry, Rafael de Souza, Searchmetrics. I wanted to take this, give this a different tangent from everything you guys have been talking about. I'm sure you'll agree that when we talk about the evolution of search, we also need to consider how it's resonating with budget holders in organizations, because that would also influence the evolution of search. Now, with a very technical subject area that we're dealing with on a day-to-day, how do we make all these wonderful things resonate? What are some of your thoughts on how we make these resonate with the typical CMO, with the head of digital that is not involved in SEO? So basically, how do they take our industry a lot more seriously?
It's difficult. I think we're talking a lot about the evolution of search, and we must say that our impact as SEOs are not growing, it is decreasing. And so it is more difficult than in the past to get this influence on these persons, I think.
Though that depends, I guess. It depends on the processes you have and the way you think what doing SEO actually means. I think this is undergoing an evolution as well. So if you think SEO as optimizing websites and products for the primary search engines like Google and Bing, then then your influence is actually decreasing, and very, very quickly. But if you think of all those other ecosystems that are out there, you can actually participate in, and that's what I think is when it becomes important that you, as an SEO, you also have to do product management or create products in a way, because you have to create, either you find many tiny ecosystems where you can get your website in or your product, your brand in, or you create one of those ecosystems yourself and try to lure users in there and keep them in there, and but that's you can either argue and say, okay, that's the product guys, or you say, okay, if you as an SEO are an expert in search, wherever it happens, and whoever is actually performing the search, then that might be part of your equipment, part of what you're doing, and that way you can have a bit influence.
That's how we define it. Which is the definition of SEO? So we have to discuss about it. Huh?
I mean, when you look at SEO 10 years ago, I mean, we all did SEO 10 years ago, and we did it very differently than we do it now. Was a different thing, but also 10 years ago, all these large organizations, they had no clue about SEO. They knew there's some Google and they do some things, but SEO was kind of more for us. Like, we built tons of made for AdSense pages, we built a lot of projects, and we did some SEO for smaller companies who understood that this is a big leverage. If you look at SEO now, I mean, maybe the name SEO is not that super sexy, maybe anymore, or maybe because a CMO doesn't understand what SEO is, but they do understand search. And if you look at some organizations, could be larger ones or smaller ones who grow to larger companies, in that moment when they do understand search and how to leverage it, they do see very quickly how important it is. Just take things like Pinterest. Oh, Pinterest is also like image search engines, but their phenomenal growth is based on Google. For any kind of image-related search you do, Pinterest is showing up. They leveraged AMP on mobile. They leverage not just image search, they also have incredibly good organic rankings, so they understood. Or look at, or take Wayfair as an example. So it's a good example. It's a company that understood very early on that search and content and how pages are kind of need to be linked together, and they had a huge growth. They have a huge SEO team. They're super successful business-wise because they baked this thinking into their thing. Or like Amory said today in the morning, a lot of decisions they make on content is coming out of SEO. SEO needs to be baked in. So I believe the larger organizations, they needed many, many more years than we thought of to bake this into their strategy. And we see many other large organizations, like, seriously, like the Fortune 10 ones in the US now, putting SEO more into their marketing mix, but maybe they don't call it SEO, but it's happening. Yeah. So I believe SEO is super, super sexy because what we do and what it means for the organization is important. But maybe the role we have is a need to to change, like, because a product manager needs to put SEO more into his work, a developer, a marketer, and all these kind of different other people in the organization. But if you do it right, you can be super successful because search is a big part of everyone's life. So you can't just bet on social or, I don't know, Snapchat marketing, right? I mean, that's not how it should work.
Could I totally agree. In our agency, we are fitting content marketing and SEO very together because you got so much information from Google about your customer and your target groups that you can use it better than any other tool to create content out of it. And but then you have to discuss it. It is a lot of things we do in SEO. It is for the preparation for conceptions, for content conceptions and things, and this is a very big part. But you can say why the content marketing manager can do it also with the tools. Why it is an SEO thing. So because it comes from the search engine, but it's a responsibility question. So.
That's probably one of the reasons why many companies are not really successful SEO-wise, or are just getting less successful because they got their SEO manager, but he's like in a cave.
Yeah.
And he's got to work there by him or herself. And so they don't get the basics right. And by basics, I don't mean the technical basics of SEO, but understanding what SEO means and where you should put it within the company and all the processes. So I'm a bit obsessed with processes, right? So what you've got all those different departments, and basically most of them, if you've got a company that is mainly working online or publishing online or offering services or products online, chances are that as an SEO, you should probably work with almost all departments in a way, and they should consult you. Even if you're an in-house SEO, they should consult you. But if it's not happening, and in most companies I've seen so far, is not happening, or it's not happening properly, then you've got the SEO in their cave, and nothing good come out of it. So basically, they're just doing the very basics, and that's not how you're winning.
Because of this, we restructured this year our complete organization. In the last years, we got our teams in SEO team, PPC team, PR team. Now, since June, we are mixing the teams for more integration. In every team there are one SEO, one PPC manager, and one PR manager, so they can work integrated and learn from each other and understand each other and bring both worlds of communication and online marketing together. That's where it works very, very well.
That's cool.
Actually, I have to interrupt our funny group of people here on stage. Thank you very much for your attention for this time right now. Thank you very much for this short introduction, this short discussion. I'm not sure, do you like to get the last words? Yeah?